Hello and welcome. I'm going to cover a few things about multi-factor authentication and Office 365 in conjunction with Windows Azure. I'll start off here inside my administrative center in Office 365. I'm on the dashboard page, and because multi-factor authentication is set up on a per user basis, I'll go ahead and proceed into users and groups. Here I have a list of all of my users. You're probably familiar with this screen, but note that in the June timeframe, we added this last line, which is set multi-factor authentication requirements. And so we can either learn more, which is going to take you to some TechNet information, or we can go ahead and set this up. So I'll click Setup, and you'll notice that we can set up multi-factor authentication now, and there's access to a deployment guide here to give you further reference. Probably the first thing you'll notice, though, when perusing this is that it's limited to the different administrators within Office 365. So when we think about customers' concerns and moving to the cloud around security, this allows us to very quickly address those individuals who would have the ability to do almost anything throughout the service. And so that's very handy, but realizing that we might want to set up multi-factor authentication for users beyond administrators, how do we go about doing that? And the answer is that it does not appear within this window. You can't do it through the Office 365 Admin Center. And so what I'd like to do now is show you how you move into Windows Azure in the portal and set it up and enable it for additional users. So if we open up my Windows Azure portal, and this is a trial, and you can get a trial very easily. Just go to windowsazure.com and sign up for a free trial. And if you leverage your login for Office 365, then you'll be tied to that and you can get access to that instance of Windows Azure Active Directory. So the directory service that we use behind Office 365 is Windows Azure Active Directory, and you can see my directory here. And when you first click on the directory, you get this page that allows you to do some quick start operations, and you'll notice that enabling multi-factor authentication is one of those options. So I'll go ahead and click on that, and it's creating a multi-factor authentication provider for my directory service. Now, if I actually go ahead and click OK here, if I actually go back out, I can see that multi-factor authentication provider that's been created right here. And it's enabled on a per user basis, and it's for the Microsoft directory, which is the default name that we provide for Office 365. Now, what's interesting is that if we move back over here into our admin console and we refresh, we'll notice that we have the ability to extend now multi-factor authentication to sign-in allowed users. And so all of these users now are available to me to set up, and I could go ahead and choose Alan S., for instance, and enable him for multi-factor authentication. And it gives us a warning here saying, hey, if this user hasn't done this before, here's a link that you can send them to that helps them set this up. And when we enable someone for multi-factor authentication, they're going to have to go through additional steps. And so we want to make sure that they're educated and aware. And so I'll go ahead and enable multi-factor authentication for Alan. And now when Alan logs in, additional steps will be necessary. So here I'm at the login portal for Office 365, and I'm going to go ahead and log in as Alan S. here. And the first thing that you'll notice is that when we go ahead and proceed on logging in, that we're going to be asked to set up multi-factor authentication. And so hopefully you would have sent that URL to Alan so that he would understand more about it ahead of time, but we'll go ahead and proceed and set it up now. And you'll notice that I can choose the contact method that I want to use for default for multi-factor authentication. And so I may choose mobile phone, my office phone, or a mobile app. And we'll talk more about mobile app in just a moment. So I'll choose mobile phone because they're pretty much ubiquitous. I'll select my country, the United States, and I'll put in my phone number. And I can now say, hey, I want to be called, in which case an attendant will tell me to type in a key and log in, or I can have a code sent in text message format. So, fairly straightforward process here. So I hit next, and I can go ahead and verify that. And so I'll choose to verify that, and just take my word for it here. We'll be getting a text on my phone here shortly. I just received the text, and it's asked me to type in the code. All right, so I'll go ahead and type that in. Verify. And verification was successful. And now it proceeds to a step where I can set up additional security verification for applications. And so we're going to cover this in a separate demonstration. But the point here to note is that the multi-factor authentication is against the service online. So when you think about SharePoint Online, the admin console, your Outlook webmail, and things like that are covered. But if you're actually accessing things that the service holds through rich client applications, principally things like Outlook, then that's not protected by multi-factor authentication. And so app passwords give us that capability, okay? And so I'm not going to use this account with those apps for this demonstration, and now it's going to go ahead and log us in. Now, it was important to note that when I set up and verified, I chose a simple option, which was text messaging. I could have chose mobile phone, or I could have chose a mobile application. And so what I want to do now is go back in and configure and leverage the multi-factor authentication application for the mobile phone, because it's a pretty neat way to go ahead and do this. I'll go ahead and go into my Office 365 settings, and this is where I'm going to effect changes to additional security verification. You'll notice that there is an option for additional security verification. This used to be housed under the password area, but they've then since extended it here, so it's a little bit easier to find. So I'll click on that, and we can update phone numbers that we use for account security. And so if you'll recall, I set it up to use my phone for text messaging. And what we might want to do now is go ahead and configure it to notify me through an application. And so it gives us a warning and flag saying, hey, we have to enable the mobile application. And we'll go ahead and configure this application. And when we configure the application, it gives us some instructions on the screen here. But what's nice is that once you download and install the application, which is step one, there you can go ahead and add accounts. And you can either type in the code and URL that's listed right here, or the application has a mechanism to actually scan the code that you see on the screen there, and then configure the application automatically for you. And when you do that, it sets it up, and you're up and running in a matter of moments. And so what I'd like to do after the activation status checking has been complete is to go ahead and show you how that actually works on the phone in terms of the codes and whatnot. So what we'll do is we'll log out and then log back in as Alan, and then leverage the code through the multi-factor authentication application. So the mobile app's been configured. I'll go ahead and save that setting, and I'll verify that the application is my preferred option. And that means I click a box on the application when it sends me a notification, and I just did that. It's now saving the updates. And basically what that was doing was just checking to ensure that the application is working before we set it as our default method. So I'm done, and now I'll just go ahead and sign out. Okay, so here I am at the portal again, and I'm going to log in as Alan S. So I'll pass his credentials. And what you'll notice is that I'm given some additional sign-in options, right? And so what it's saying is it's sending a notification to my mobile device. And so we'll wait here. And when I get that notification, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my camera, and I'll show you what that looks like. And so multi-factor auth, and I can just simply click verify. We'll go back over to my application, and you'll notice that it'll just go ahead and log me in. So that's one option, and that's now my default option, okay? So let's go ahead and log out and log back in and see what some of the other options are, because Alan may not have his phone with him. He may not the phone that he has may not have this application installed, etc. So when we type in Alan's credentials this second time, we'll explore some of the additional options. So what are the other verification options? So I can be notified on my mobile device via a text or be called. I also can use a verification code. So instead of hitting the verify button, I can choose to enter the code. And I'll go ahead and show you how that appears. So when I look at my device with the application installed, you can see that I have these codes, and you see this progress bar going across the top, and I apologize for the glare, but you'll see that after that progress bar reaches the end of the right-hand side of the screen, then all of these numbers will refresh, and these are all different accounts. And so that lowest account is where I would go ahead and log in as Alan S. So 435537. So I'll pass that. And sign in. So now I've shown you two different ways that we can log in to an Office 365 account as a normal user, leveraging multi-factor authentication with the multi-factor authentication application. That said, a more simple way would be to receive a phone call or an actual text message, but the application is pretty slick, so I wanted to make sure that that was clear to you. That concludes this demonstration.